Okay guys, so continuing my coverage of the Fantastic Four and obviously everything that's went on, undoubtedly there was a bunch of, just scripts that Fox took a look at and they scrapped. Most of these happened to be because of budgetary reasons, because they wanted cheaper. So one of the ones we're going to look at today, I figured I'd go into, kind of read everything that's here to you guys and then go over my thoughts and the whole, vibe I get from it and everything like that. So the one we're going to be looking at is actually by Jeremy Slater. He had this overseen by Simon Kinberg, who brought it in to have it looked over, and they wanted Josh Trank to obviously make a movie. So this is what would have been. So the script actually, they say, feels a whole lot more like a modern day Marvel movie. There's a lot of action, there's a whole lot of interplay between the characters and quick banter, and they say it does feel a little bit overstuffed. It actually covers the origin of the Fantastic Four, origin of Dr. Doom, Galactus, Mole Man, Herbie the Robot, and the Fantasticar. Now there are a whole lot of elements that actually ended up being in the final version of the movie that we got, but you're going to obviously notice changes. So first off, in the movie, Reed does actually get invited to the Baxter building, much like he did for the scholarship. This is, of course, still sticking close to the Ultimates. There, he, of course, meets Sue and Victor Von Doom. Now, Victor, in this interpretation, is a very nerdy guy and very intelligent, but when he sees what Reed Richards is doing with the, teleportation and transdimensional things, he actually starts stealing his work and sending it back, sending the research back to scientists in his country of Latveria. There is actually a whole subplot where Reed Richards has kind of stopped hanging out and calling Ben. And Ben, kind of feels left behind because this was one of his only friends. So he ends up leaving and actually enlists in the army. So now another similar part that you're actually going to see in this is when they actually get the quantum gate working, Reed and Victor decide to do it under the cover of night because the government won't let them use it. They end up actually calling Ben, and he's like, listen Ben, I'm sorry, but I promise to you, when we get here, you're going to be the first man to take steps on this new world. We don't know what it is yet, but the interesting part is Sue and Johnny both stay behind to actually watch the controls and everything. So in the movie, the actual quantum gate is actually what it implies here. It's a little arm that actually transports them. They're not like warping it, they're actually going through a gate. Almost imagine like a Stargate like thing, where they go through a wormhole and they show up on this other place. Now when they get there, Victor Von Doom, of course being Doom, pushes Ben aside and he ends up being the first man to take steps on this place. Now here is the part that is absolutely amazing. I wish they would have stuck with this. When they come here, they realize that it's not the land we got in the movie. What this is actually is remains of an ancient civilization, of a city that's been ruined. There's a bunch of corpses everywhere and they're kind of confused. So they slowly make their way into this city and, there's buildings crushed, there's still corpses everywhere, and they find a giant amphitheater. Now, when they go in there, they notice that something is off and there is something giant in the distance. And what this is, it's a huge figure wearing a ton of battle armor and just these huge blades coming out of the sides of its helmet. So it's at this moment that we realize that this is Galactus, and he starts storming after our heroes. So all three are rushing back to the gate. They're on the communicators with Sue Storm. They're really trying to get her to get everything done. And as they're running, seamlessly we see that Dr. Doom is killed by this dark matter wave that Galactus is shooting at them. Ben Grimm and Reed Richards both make it in, and as they're getting back through the quantum gate, we see he shoots this dark matter cloud that actually ends up, going back to the laboratory, and the four are now, all engulfed in it, and that's how they're going to develop their powers. So now we're actually going to have a scene that's pretty much the same as it was in the final movie. We get, Reed, he sees Johnny and he's burning, he's trying to crawl, and it's like this horrific scene. We see that, Sue's looking in the mirror, and she realizes that her face, like her skin, is almost falling off, and she's afraid, but it's because she's going invisible and it's the different layers, shifting back. So I think that would have been an absolutely phenomenal scene. So at this point, the movie does a 4-year time jump. Johnny Storm actually has a reality TV series that's actually starting to dip in ratings. Sue works at the Baxter building, and she's using her powers to actually help people, to try to, you know, see what's wrong with everything. And Dr. Elder shows up and invites her back to something that they referenced earlier, which was the Moloid program, or project, if you will. But she doesn't want to because she's afraid they're going to weaponize it. So once again, just like in the movie, we see that Ben Grimm is only allowed out when he's on these missions for the government. He's been weaponized fully. We see that Reed is actually on hiding. He did end up running away, you know, and he's working on stuff himself. He's building things. He built Herbie the robot, and, you know, he's trying to work on the Fantastic car, which is pretty damn awesome. So at this point, we transition back to Latveria, where we see the scientists that had the information that Dr. Von Doom smuggled out of the United States are actually building their own giant quantum gate. Now, you know, they actually do end up sending a team there, and when they're there, they end up running into Victor Von Doom, and, you know, he ends up murdering everybody with dark matter energy. You know, the whole team is killed, and he actually has some sort of shape-shifting abilities in this. He can shoot electricity, he can shoot electrified razor wire from his hands. That sounds pretty damn insane. So there is a scene where Reed Richards is actually, you know, in Indonesia, and he's attacked by a bunch of Victor's thugs, or he assumes it's them, because they're using weapons based on Reed's design. So, you know, he tries to call Sue, and at this time Sue was actually meeting with Ben for the first time in a long time, and he's, you know, Ben has come down to accept who he is. He thinks he's a monster, and all he wants to do is just pretty much do what he has to, and that's be a killing machine. Over with Reed Richards at the Fantastic car, prototype loaded up, Herbie, and he actually begins flying across the ocean. So at the same time this is happening, we actually see a bunch of characters called the Shock Troopers in the script, and they assault the Baxter building. Johnny happens to just be there, and you know, a bunch of people are getting killed, and he tries to get Sue and everybody, you know, out of there, but he's trying to do this for, like, he has like this show that he's running. Of course, it's the reality show, and he's trying to make what Johnny does. He wants more fame and everything. During this, we actually see that Dr. Elder gets a bunch of the moldoid juice on him and transforms into the Mole Man. So Reed Richards actually ends up showing up, and now they got this giant moldoid creature type thing in New York. And much like, you know, with the Mole Man, the first encounter, they're going to go fight this. And this is described as a pretty damn epic battle. You know, the team engaging them, you know, all four trying to figure out how to do it, and obviously they're using their power and everything. So it sounds like it would have been a pretty damn awesome fight to see. So now there are a few other notes. You know, the team actually gets to use their powers a whole lot, and Sue is one of the central characters in the movie. Her powers are pretty much vital to everything. At one point in the movie, when they're flying the Fantastic car, she actually engulfs it in the shield so they can reach incredible speeds, you know, without affecting their body with the, you know, different G-forces and things like that, which honestly, that's really smart. We get to see Reed Richards actually use his body as a airbag when they crash at one point, and during the final battle, Herbie is actually very important in it. And speaking of the final battle, that's where we're going with this, and it actually takes place in Latveria, but it is revealed that there is a shape-shifting, of course, Dr. Doom to our characters, and he's not the actual Dr. Doom. This is just a Doombot. What we find out is that Victor is actually physically attached to the planet they went to with the dark matter, so he is one with the planet now. And what he has done from this planet is send these tendril types, I would describe them as maybe like Man of Steel, when there's that like world engine with the tendrils, something like that, to actually attack the Fantastic Four. So they end up defeating him over, you know, a course of time, and everything seems to be okay for now, you know, and the film ends with him trapped over in the negative zone, the Fantastic Four telling the government that Galactus is coming, and they need to, you know, get ready. They retool the Baxter building as their new home base. They actually start a school in this, you know, for children that could be interested or could be smart and things like that, and that they're going to need a lot of help on defending Earth from Galactus, from the thing they saw. So that is the entire story. It came in at 121 pages. Now, if you guys have ever looked into film or anything, generally one page is 1 minute. That's how you tend to write it, unless it's an action shot. So, you know, that can be a little more condensed and things like that. Now, this actually sounds much different than even what I would have accepted. I think this definitely would have made for a better film. It sounds a lot more lighthearted. You know, we get to see Galactus, and it sounds like Galactus looked like Galactus. Sounds like Doom, you know, the way they conveyed him. It's like, oh, he's a Doom bot, but then there's this planet over here. You know, they could have tied it even further. Could maybe this planet have been something like Zenlaw? You know, we don't know yet, but it could have been something like that. Honestly, reading through this a couple times, I could definitely get the vibe that this was supposed to be a more Marvel, you know, Marvel Disney style take. And you can definitely tell that a lot of elements of this were kept, but they wanted to make it cheaper, hence why they made it a darker movie and they skimped on a lot of it. And I think that's unfortunate because, honestly, I don't think this movie right here that I'm talking about right now would have been, you know, a 9 out of 10 or something. But I think this had the potential to be a, you know, good entertaining 6, maybe even a 7 out of 10. And, you know, actually differentiate themselves from the old series while introducing us to a new version of the Fantastic Four for the modern day, using, you know, younger people and things like that, you know, modern interpretation of characters we love. Unfortunately, you know, we'll never know what this is going to look like on film, so it does kind of suck, but hey, at least, you know, we'll get another reboot soon. So thank you for watching the video, and if you guys like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you haven't already, check out some of these other great videos we have on the channel. Just click the annotation right there, it'll take you to them. Thank you for watching, guys, and have a good one.